LSU President William Tate has resigned. Why and what does it mean for LSU athletics? Let's talk about it. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. A little bit of an emergency episode here on this Monday morning, depending on when you're watching. But just minutes ago, we learned officially that LSU President William Tate has resigned his seat. And now LSU will be on the look for a new president, or however the university administration may be structured. I'll give you a little bit of the backstory as I understand it, and then we'll talk about how this impacts LSU athletics. Because if we're being perfectly honest, that's why you're here. You all care about LSU athletics. I've never hidden this. I am an LSU alum. I'm very proud of that. I love the university. I don't just love LSU athletics. I do love Louisiana State University. I'm a proud alum. And so when things do impact the university, and certainly as it affects athletics, we're going to talk about it here. Let me give you a little bit of the backstory, because I know this is going to come as a surprise to some. So William Tate came to LSU from South Carolina, where he was the provost. Prior to that, he had also worked at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He had worked at Washington University in St. Louis. And so he's well-traveled and has been a lot of places, and a very smart man. When former Governor John Bel Edwards appointed William Tate, he became the first Black university president in LSU history, and at the time, the first Black president ever at a Southeastern Conference school. It's a very landmark hire when John Bel Edwards made that appointment. But remember also, every appointment like that by the governor has to be approved by the LSU Board of Supervisors, and board members are appointed by the governor. So in many respects, the board kind of is there to just rubber stamp what the governor wants them to do. Board members do term off, and when board members term off, the governor at the time appoints the new board members. And what's interesting is what's happened since Governor Jeff Landry has been elected. He has since appointed 3 new Board of Supervisors members. So now Governor Landry has a majority. He's a Republican. And the former Governor John Bel Edwards is a Democrat. By the way, this is not a red-blue thing. You make your own decisions. That I'm just stating facts and how this is all transpired. So Governor Edwards is a Democrat. Governor Landry currently is a Republican. He has turned over seats on the board. And clearly, it's been very obvious as tensions have risen, particularly in the last 6 months, that the writing was on the wall for President Tate. Find a new job, resign, however you want to make it look as amicable publicly as it can be. Maybe this really came to a head if you were noticing. Maybe you noticed the story back at the end of January when Winston DeQueer resigned. Winston DeQueer had been LSU's lead attorney for years, and he was a Tate defender. They were in lockstep. And so whenever anything comes against the university, a lawsuit, you want to fire someone, whatever it may be, you lean on your lead counsel, and that was Winston DeQueer. And when DeQueer was fired, that was really a shot across the bow for Tate and his influence, the hierarchy there at the university. There have been other scuffles, so to speak. The Omar the Tiger story from the fall, that was something that that President Tate was not on board with, as were many members of academia at LSU, as they feuded with the governor, as the governor pushed to have a live tiger in Tiger Stadium for the Alabama game. As silly as that may sound to some, that's a real thing that the governor wanted to push, was bullish on, did not have a lot of university support, and so they butted heads. In effect, it was just very clear that the two sides here were not going to coexist, and ultimately Governor Landry was going to want to have Tate removed and install his own president there of the university. Who the next president is, I don't have a great sense on that. I think one name to keep an eye on is Eric Monday. The LSU, they'll probably have a an interim president, as well as is what happened when, if you remember, F. King Alexander resigned, was fired, went to Oregon State back in 2020, in the summer of 2020. They had an interim president before President Tate was ultimately installed. And literally, as we're in the middle of recording this episode, my phone rang, and I got word that President Tate, the resignation, comes with a co-announcement that he is accepting the same position at Rutgers. So right in line with what we thought. This was an edict, certainly from the governor, so as to say, go find a new job, however you want it to look. So President Tate goes, finds a job. He said it to Rutgers. And just for clarification, so that I can be accurate and give proper attribution, Richie O'Leary, who's the publisher of the Rivals site for Rutgers, first tweeted it, and then Steve Politi, who at NJ.com and Rutgers Rant followed it up as well. So the Rutgers side reporting that Tate will become the Rutgers president. As I'm sitting here recording this, telling you that he's set to meet with his members of his staff today on Monday to let them know and then make a formal announcement. So we'll get more information as that comes along. But by and large, I think for this audience here on Locked on LSU, the larger question is, how does this impact athletics? And I'll get into that as we continue Locked on LSU, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. So instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan long-term goals. And managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. So how does President Tate's resignation impact LSU athletics? There's a few different ways to look at this. Certainly, the president could replace the athletic director. So, in theory, President Tate could have replaced Scott Woodward. Now, I don't think that would happen. For athletics to make any decision, hiring new coaches, approving new contracts, salaries, etc., all of that needs board of supervisor approval. And of course, as we already stated, members of the board are appointed by the governor. So effectively, if the governor wants something pushed through, it would happen. I can tell you one of the things that has been sort of an undercurrent is that in this era of, as we move toward revenue share, Governor Landry and Scott Woodward maybe don't see eye to eye on everything, in particular how athletics is spending. Now, it is important to remember that LSU athletics does not accept a dollar of state funds. LSU athletics is independently funded from the Tiger Athletic Foundation through projects, fundraising efforts, but also through the revenue it generates. So that's important to note, because a lot of times we get these conversations about, you'll hear often people say, taxpayer money going to this or that, or coaches. That's just not the case. Coaches' salaries, buyouts, facilities, scholarships, everything is privately funded, either through fundraising efforts of the Tiger Athletic Foundation, now NIL efforts through the collective, or funds raised by revenue raised by LSU athletics, be it your SEC affiliation, ticket sales, merchandise deals, other things like that, your radio network deals as well. So many different ways that they generate funds and revenue to LSU athletics that's independent of the state. But if you're just wondering, I think what we're seeing is maybe an even bigger chasm between the brands of LSU athletics and LSU, the university. And what's really interesting is that even the most ardent member of academia would have to acknowledge that LSU athletics is the front door to the university. While the university, that's really any university. And while the university may do great things in academia, I guess the old joke is like, you're never going to put 100,000 people in a stadium to watch a science lab, right? They'll go watch a football game. You know, when Joe Burrow wins the Heisman Trophy, when Angel Reese and Kim Mulkey win a national championship, that puts LSU, the three letters, the brand, on such an international stage that academia can never really compete with. So in many respects, sometimes members of academia kind of have to grin and bear their teeth and just latch on and just accept that that's the way it's going to be. I've had many conversations over the years with members of the LSU administration, and certainly in admissions, where applications for admission to the university go up every year when LSU wins a national championship in football. You may not like this comparison, but look at the University of Alabama. In the 17 years that Nick Saban was there, the applications, the brand of the university, just the physical buildings and facilities built because Alabama was winning championships, it upped their endowment, donations, contributions to the university, buildings, everything, because of what a monster that football program became. I think what you do see, however, is maybe not a lot of cooperation between the two sides. And it's interesting because when Scott Woodward was hired, one of the things that he really latched onto was the word alignment. You hear Brian Kelly say that often. And what he wants is alignment, because that's what LSU had when Scott Woodward was at LSU back in the early 2000s. Remember, he was hired by then Chancellor Mark Emmert as the liaison between LSU athletics and the state capitol. What he wanted was the state government, the LSU University administration, and the athletics administration and the head coach, all the way down to Nick Saban, all to be aligned so that way they're pulling resources in the same direction. That hasn't really been the case of late, but that was Scott Woodward's objective when he came back. And with Governor Landry, he and Scott Woodward are closer politically. I don't think it's any great secret that Scott Woodward leans a little left of the political aisle. Well, now you have a governor that is a Republican and a staunch Republican governor, that maybe it's created a little friction there as well. So you don't always see a ton of cooperation. But the other thing that's, I think, important is to remember, there's just so much market decay in all athletics. Look at the PGA, for example, with Live Golf. Now, they're not crushing it, but there was enough of an opportunity with the PGA asleep at the wheel for people with money to come in and create disruption. Same thing with things like the G League. And of course, you're seeing it in the NCAA. So the fact that we're in this point with revenue share knocking on the door coming up here in the summer, because you're going to need as many resources as possible to stay competitive, I think that alignment has never been more important for athletics, to make sure that athletics administration, university administration, and the state administration are aligned on those objectives. So what direction Governor Landry goes with the new university president will be interesting. But just to maybe further illustrate the chasm, President Tate's salary was $750,000. Now he had incentives and escalators that could make it go higher, but his salary was $750K. Austin Thomas, who Scott Woodward was handpicked to come basically be Scott Woodward's right hand, just recently got a promotion, and his salary went up to $850,000. So the new executive athletic director, deputy athletic director to Scott Woodward, Austin Thomas, making more than the university president. You may roll your eyes and say that's ridiculous, but go back to the point we're making. LSU Athletics is a 9-figure annual entity and is the front door to the university. So tremendously. Who they hire could matter for alignment, but LSU athletics in this era, as long as it continues to remain competitive on the field, and continues to raise money in the manners in which they have, and through the SEC's revenue sharing, will continue to be on the path they are. So as this story develops, we'll certainly continue to let you know and follow along. But President William Tate resigns. He's headed to Rutgers. Big chasm between he and Governor Jeff Landry. Now we'll see who Governor Landry appoints to that position and what direction it may take with LSU athletics. Of course, we'll tell you much more about it as we learn more here on Locked on LSU. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Speaking of podcasts, if you are on podcasts, remember, thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen, you can check out The Portal Show. Be the most informed fan on the rapid change of the college football landscape. Find The Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.